Hey, Mike, would you say
Ethan.
that you are? Would you say that you are down with the GKC?
Uh-oh. I feel like this is going to have a...
Damn, all these essays got me going crazy to the Z. Hit it, GKC, are you with me? I'm the one on the orthodoxy tip. I just toss that cheese on some bread. Get fed, no crackers when I eat it up, I'm stacking. Damn, I feel like the man who was Thursday. For knowledge, I'm thirsty. Read GK for Shirley. Next, get heretics. Got me taking down evils, eugenics. And the beer I'm drinking, I'm thinking about smoking this pipe while reading. Making my mind blow, cause I ain't gotta pay for no GKC. Bro, it's public domain. All these essays got me going insane. Down with the GKC. Father Brown with the GKC. G to the K and then to the C. GKC, I'm going crazy to the Z. All about the GKC.
That was amazing, man. I didn't know where you were going when it says no crackers, but...
I'm going crazy to the Z. Read it cover to cover, then I read another.
That's a
Brother,
good
watch that brain get fatter than your mother. Chesterton, only diet, you should try it. Like JBP eating steak, can't deny it. I'm a GK.
You're listening to another episode of Chesterton's Gateway with Ethan, Nicolle and Michael Grumbine and me, AI Chesterton. What's up, all my essays?
Try to get me to read C.S. Lewis. CSL would tell you GKC is why we do this. Where all my essays at? Down with the GKC.
All right, here we are.
Father Brown with the
Another episode of
GKC.
Chesterton
G to the K and
up in that
to the
gateway.
C. GKC, I'm going crazy to the Z.
Yeah.
All about the GKC.
that is amazing. And if we're doing that for all the episodes, that's just... I think you're going to get a lot of requests for just a podcast with AI.
A lot
Chesterton.
of requests to stop with the AI.
Well, there'll be that too.
Yeah,
But,
that'd be good.
you might actually get a request for like a music channel or something.
There is Spotify. Hey, anybody wants to hear every time we make a song, I put up on the Spotify. Look up Chesterton's Gateway, not the podcast, but the band name. And I usually put the link in the show notes. But yeah, all the songs on every episode so far will be up there. In fact, these episodes aren't out yet, but they're up there now. So people don't know that we're recording these early before the podcast even launches.
Excellent.
We got to launch soon, but we will.
Yeah, we got to launch.
But yeah, I finally did a rap song.
Is this what passes for music nowadays? Man
Sorry,
alive.
He's always dropping Man Alive.
Sorry, man. AI Chesterton. I feel bad. The first time in my life I felt bad offending an AI.
Well, all right, we're doing another two-parter. So what we've been doing, for those of you who are jumping in here, this podcast, what we do is we go one essay per episode. Unless they're long, then we break them up. Because what we want to do is we want to go word by word through Chesterton. We want to create a companion. Whatever you're reading, you get on here, listen along, and you will digest that essay that you're having trouble with, hopefully much better and in a fun way, and get a GK Chesterton rap song thrown in with it. And so we go line by line. So we're not messing around here. So this week, and we pick a book. So we're doing right now my book, Chesterton's Gateway. We're on chapter 5. And this is one of my all-time favorite. I think we're on chapter 5, right? Oh,
yes. No,
4? We broke it up. Whatever number it is, it's...
I think we're chapter 4, maybe. Because we did 2 episodes.
It's the GK. What one is it?
On certain modern writers and the institution of the family, from the book Heretics, published in 1905, part 1 of 2.
Right. Well, I mean, yeah, it was originally published in Heretics, 1905. And now it's the, I think, 4th chapter in my book. Anyway, in order. So that's what we're getting into. This is a longer one, so we're doing this in 2 parts. And let's a little preamble before we get started. Like I said, we're going to break this into 2 pieces. And Chesterton's defending the family. What was going on during this time that made Chesterton feel that he needed to defend the family? Because in a lot of these essays from Heretics, as we've discussed, he's taking on different people's ideas. He takes on Rudyard Kipling in one of them, takes on H.G. Wells in one of them. But in this one, he doesn't name names. So there must be a general if you're reading this at the time, you get where he's coming from, I assume.
Yes, and it's very unique, actually, as far as I know. This was the first time in history, the late 19th century, where the concept of the family itself was being criticized. And probably the most famous remnant from that time that everyone would know about today would be Karl Marx, Frederick Engels, and their Communist Manifesto. And this is where he starts to both of them, actually Engels was more of the deep thinker than Marx was, but they're both criticizing the old institutions, and they see the family as part of kind of a major piece of the old institutions that need to be taken down for the greater good of all of society and the new communist state that's going to arise. And that was middle of the 19th century that they wrote the Communist Manifesto, and but then more closer to this time of for Chesterton, Engels, the like I said, the real brainchild of the Communist Manifesto. He criticizes the patriarchal family, and he uses terms which people nowadays would find very familiar. He says it's an institution of oppression. So because it's based around the oppression essentially of the wife and the children by the husband.
Yeah, I got a quote here. It says, the modern individual family is founded on the open or concealed domestic slavery of the wife, and modern society is a mass composed of these individual families as its molecules. So is he like the Steve Wozniak of communism?
Yeah, exactly. He's the Steve Wozniak, except that more people know about Wozniak than people nowadays know about Engels. Because mostly because Lenin and the entire communist movement in Russia idolized Marx, and Engels wasn't as much in favor of that by the time. But anyway, so there's that, and then this is the rise of feminism too, which is not it's not disconnected from the communist movement. And go ahead.
Another quote from them. I'm curious actually what this means. The bourgeois family will vanish as a matter of course when its complement vanishes, and both will vanish with the vanishing of capital. It's basically implying it's a problematic byproduct.
Exactly. So I don't know where. I think it's from the Communist Manifesto, but
it's like a product of a flawed system that if we fix everything, people will need families.
So the complement to the bourgeoisie for Marx and Engels is the system under which the mass of humanity works for the small middle and upper classes. And so when that mass of humanity stops working for them, I guess that would be the complement, then the bourgeois family would vanish because it wouldn't be able to oppress the masses, according to their view. So I think probably, without going back to the manifesto itself, I've been reading everything around it. I think that's a quote referring to that complement, the complement of all the downtrodden that work to support the rich.
Okay.
This
is interesting.
Not
I got a couple more quotes from people during this time.
Okay.
What they had to say about the family. This one's from Emma Goldman, an anarchist. She's an anarchist and a social critic. Marriage and love have nothing in common. They are as far apart as the poles are. In fact, they're antagonistic to each other. The most vital right is the right to love and be loved, yet marriage kills it. Is she happily married?
Yeah, I was going to say, tell me you're unhappily married without saying you're unhappily married. This is early feminists. Gilman was another one of those, and so there's a bunch of them that they are they're in the process of using the principles of, it's interesting because the principles of communism kind of fed into the anarchist movement, because in order for any kind of communist revolution to take place, any kind of socialist revolution to take place, as they would call it, then you had to have people willing to act violently against society, and those became the anarchists. And so the ideas of the communists and socialists of the 19th century then became the ideas of the feminists, who were also anarchists, and so that you had the rise of the feminist movement at that time too. So what
were they really proposing as an alternative? Because one crazy thing about that time is, the things that people kind of won't admit to that they really want to do now, they were actually doing them back then. Like when you look at like eugenics and all the crazy stuff, the world, all the stuff going on around a little bit after World War II, all the kind of like man's deepest desires for how we're going to really make society work. Everyone tried them, like really bold-faced, crazy crap. And I'm curious, what were people saying? Like, we have big cafeterias for all the kids and big nurseries for them to sleep in.
Yes. Yeah, essentially, think
professor mothers.
Government-run boarding houses, essentially. They thought that the state could do the job. Somebody would have to do the job, and so all the people would step in and do the job, or in other words, otherwise known as the state. And so, and eugenics fits into that because eugenics is the removal of the weak and the undesirable from the gene pool. So if the government's going to step in and decide how the family gets run and how children are raised, then it seems natural, according to these people, that the government would then decide who should reproduce and who shouldn't, and who should be removed from society because they are unwanted or unworthy or weak, so the government. The government's it's going to be foster care for everybody, baby. It's going to work great.
And the goal is for us all to live a comfortable, easier life, free of all the pain and headache of the home, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And that's where this essay is heading.
And that's where Chesterton picks up.
So I think we should dive in because it's a lot, and
do it.
It's great. It's one of my favorite. This one really impacted me when I first heard it.
Mine too. I'm a big fan of the family. As
he says things I'd never heard said before in this.
Cool. Let's do it.
All right. And yes, for context, Michael has 9 children. He's very pro-family.
I am. Turns out.
The family may fairly be considered, one would think, an ultimate human institution. Everyone would admit that it has been the main cell and central unit of almost all societies hitherto, except indeed such societies as that of Lacedaemon, which went in for efficiency and has therefore perished and left not a trace behind. Christianity, even enormous as was its revolution, did not alter this ancient and savage sanctity. It merely reversed it. It did not deny the trinity of father, mother, and child. It merely read it backwards, making it run child, mother, father. This it called not the family, but the Holy Family, for many things are made holy by being turned upside down. But some sages of our own decadence have made a serious attack on the family. They have impugned it, as I think wrongly, and its defenders have defended it and defended it wrongly. The common defense of the family is that amid the stress and fickleness of life, it is peaceful, pleasant, and at one. But there is another defense of the family which is possible, and to me evident. This defense is that the family is not peaceful, and not pleasant, and not at one.
Classic Chesterton.
Lacedaemon? Who's Lacedaemon?
Okay, so Lacedaemon, and we've read into one of our first instances of AI Chesterton not pronouncing. So the C is hard. It's Lacedaemon. And that is ancient Sparta, which had the idea that the communists had about raising children before the communists came
it's like
along.
300. It was like 300 where they you had to fight the wolves and stuff.
Yeah, so, exactly. In the beginning, he had to fight the wolves. They actually raised all their children in common. So they raised them in sort of these common village-based groups. And great. It was wonderful. And they taught them all kinds of wonderful behavior, like how to survive wolves and how to fight each other, because it turns out that they raised the slave culture that they required to feed their culture alongside the rest of them. So it was a pretty savage and efficient culture. The Spartans, of course, were well known for being amazing warriors, but as far as their social structure goes, not a lot to be admired there.
Yeah, I thought I remember. I don't know if it's in the movie. I think it's in the comic, where they basically take kind of the weak children and throw them off a cliff, just trash them.
Yes, they do. Rome did that too, but or at least at some points it did. But the Spartans were They learned it from the Spartans. The Spartans were the first that we know of that did that.
Yeah, Planned Parenthood of the ancient world. Crazy.
Hey, throwing children off cliffs is only 3% of what they do.
Is there I don't know why I have a tough time tracking when he brings up this topsy-turvying the family and the Holy Family. I get a little, I mean, I kind of...
Right.
Taken as a given that it goes in that order and the other order. Is there any way you kind of spoon feed that to me?
My thought was that he's talking about, he read it as father, mother, child. It's not just that he's listing the three components of a family, but he's saying them in the order of priority in some societies. It is true there's a lot of corrupted societies or brutal societies where there is a kind of brutal patriarchy where the man is, he's admired for being domineering over his woman and callous towards his children. And he's first because he's strongest and the woman is next and then the child is last for being weakest. And what Chesterton's describing is that the Holy Family reverses that, where the child is first, being truly God and truly human, and the Blessed Mother in the ancient Christian tradition is next. She's next in dignity and holiness, being created without the stain of sin, never having sinned in her life, and then Saint Joseph is just last. So whenever anyone does anything wrong in the Holy Family, you know it's Saint Joseph because the other two don't. Sad.
Huh.
But anyway, he's referring to the ancient Christian reversal where the child is first, mother is second, father is last. I mean, famously, St. Joseph says nothing in all of Scripture. It is a kind of reversal.
It's kind of it's more of kind of an aside. Is that anything that ties into what he's saying here?
Right. He's just talking. It's Chesterton. We see the inside of his thought where he's everything is
I've seen him, I've seen him do this a few times where he brings that up when he brings the family and the Holy Family.
Okay.
All right, let's move on to the next part.
It is not fashionable to say much nowadays of the advantages of the small community. We are told that we must go in for large empires and large ideas. There is one advantage, however, in the small state, the city, or the village, which only the willfully blind can overlook. The man who lives in a small community lives in a much larger world. He knows much more of the fierce varieties and uncompromising divergences of men. The reason is obvious. In a large community, we can choose our companions. In a small community, our companions are chosen for us. Thus, in all extensive and highly civilized societies, groups come into existence founded upon what is called sympathy and shut out the real world more sharply than the gates of a monastery. There is nothing really narrow about the clan. The thing which is really narrow is the clique. The men of the clan live together because they all wear the same tartan, or are all descended from the same sacred cow. But in their souls, by the divine luck of things, there will always be more colors than in any tartan. But the men of the clique live together because they have the same kind of soul, and their narrowness is a narrowness of spiritual coherence and contentment, like that which exists in hell. A big society exists in order to form cliques. A big society is a society for the promotion of narrowness. It is a machinery for the purpose of guarding the solitary and sensitive individual from all experience of the bitter and bracing human compromises. It is, in the most literal sense of the words, a society for the prevention of Christian knowledge.
I first read this when I'd recently moved to the Portland area, but I'd grown up in small town Oregon. And I remember when I was in Oregon, or in my small town at the coffee shop, and some hippie guy was in there. And I saw him talking to some other guy, and they were both talking. They were both from out of our town. They were just passing through, and they were laughing about how small and closed off this place is, and how they aren't really out seeing the world, and like they're making me feel so small and tiny. I was like, I wonder what it's going to be like when I ever move to a big city. And when I moved to that big city, and I was a comic book artist, and suddenly I had my pick of friends, and I started trying to fit in with comic artists. I found drink and draws, like things I could never find in my small town. I could never go to a drink and draw where there's like 40 other comic artists. Some are famous ones that I grew up reading their comics.
Wow.
And they're all hard left And if any of them had any idea what politics were, they would, skin me alive. I was kind of going through all this, and then when I read this, and it was a huge eye opener because I had never. It helped me realize what I'd lost when I moved to the big city. A lot of friendships and families I befriended because I lived in such a small town. Those are just the people there.
Right.
And also because of the church too. But also, and then moving to Portland and finding these cliques, and the closed-mindedness was much worse in the big city.
Yeah, I have a similar but in some ways different experience. But when I first read this passage, I also thought of my own life, but I thought of the fact that I had grown up going to public school in a large city. I grew up in LA. And I was able to find, because I went to a school with thousands of kids in it, I was able to find a group of people that were like-minded to me. And what was interesting was I enjoyed it at the time, but then later on, I went to college at a very small college, and then later on in life I had kids, and they grew up and they've gone to a small school, private school, and their experience and my experience at college and theirs in grade school and high school was, I think, more healthy because I had to learn in college how to interact socially with people that were different from me because I was stuck in a class, in a dorm, with people that I didn't get to choose, what was comfortable. And so I actually had to grow in that way. And my kids are better at socialization now than I ever was because they have to, they're in a small pond, relatively speaking. It's hundreds of students instead of thousands. And so I just think they're better equipped because for actual socialization than I was coming through a large public school. So I jive with what Chesterton is saying from a slightly different angle.
We can see this change, for instance, in the modern transformation of the thing called a club. When London was smaller, and the parts of London more self-contained and parochial, the club was what it still is in villages, the opposite of what it is now in great cities. Then the club was valued as a place where a man could be sociable. Now the club is valued as a place where a man can be unsociable. The more the enlargement and elaboration of our civilization goes on, the more the club ceases to be a place where a man can have a noisy argument, and becomes more and more a place where a man can have what is somewhat fantastically called a quiet chop. Its aim is to make a man comfortable, and to make a man comfortable is to make him the opposite of sociable. Sociability, like all good things, is full of discomforts, dangers, and renunciations. The club tends to produce the most degraded of all combinations, the luxurious anchorite, the man who combines the self-indulgence of Lucullus with the insane loneliness of St. Simeon Stylites.
How do you do on that? Lucullus and St. Simeon?
Yes, that's right.
Okay,
Yeah.
What about Stylites or Stylites?
Yeah, well, probably it's probably Stylites because of because of its closeness to Greek. But I'm not sure. It's a Syrian name, ancient Syrian name. So I am not conversant in pronunciation on ancient Syrian. But Saint Simon Stylites was this, as I think you mentioned in your book, he was a saint that lived for 36 years on top of a pillar.
Oh, right. I wrote, where did he poo? That was my note.
Yeah. So he was famous for his asceticism and basically being separate from everyone else. He never had to deal with anyone else. So that's that
Living
that
on
guy.
a pole.
What's that?
Just living on a pole.
Yeah, just living on a pole.
And then, so what about Lucullus?
So Lucullus is before, right before Julius Caesar, and he's a Roman general that was famous for during the Third Mithridatic War, and essentially he was this incredibly successful general that made got immense amounts of wealth, and then he retired to live like a king, even though being a king was a bad thing in Rome. So he had to very carefully pretend that he wasn't a king or living like a king. and so he was famous for basically taking the wealth of an entire war and either taking it for himself or channeling it through himself. And so he became like the mover and shaker of everyone in Rome for 10 years or so when he got back, and was famous for indulging whatever people dreamed up, especially his family. So he was.
Out of the club, because he's talking about the difference between what I'm taking is kind of let me know if I'm getting this right. Kind of the pub where like, it's just kind of the hub of the neighborhood, and you get who you get there. They argue politics. Everyone kind of, they might fight it out, but they might, I think Chesterton talks a lot about the pub. I don't know if it's similar as to what used to be a club and he's saying is now a club. Now a club, it's everybody's kind of meeting based around a very narrow thing.
Right.
So
and
how does a club lead to that? Like a combination of Lucullus and Simeon Stylites?
Well, I think it's the comfort of Lucullus that he's honing in on. So the English club that, and for anyone that's a fan of like P.G. Wodehouse, as who's I would always recommend, great author around the turn of the 20th century, writing through World War II era, but he writes about Jeeves and Wooster are the most famous example, where he's essentially writing about most of his stories about this comfortable bachelor in the English high society, and he's part of this club as well. This kind of a club as well, which features prominently in his books. Essentially, these clubs, they got you together, and usually getting people together means that you learn to rub the rough edges off and make yourself a more sociable and adept person societally. But actually what happened was these clubs became such rarefied places. They just focused on the comfort of the people involved, that the comfort in an English sense became more and more, leave me alone, I'm here enjoying my breakfast. So you see these in movies, like they go into this English club and everyone's real quiet and all the tables are like 15 feet from each other, and the very rich are enjoying whatever, they're doing something on their own. So essentially it became the opposite of throwing people together to make them more sociable, through this discomfort that's necessary in doing so. And it became this place where you were super comfortable and also super separated from the rest of humanity, like Saint Simon Stylites. So anyway,
it's like you're sitting on your little platform, but you're like chugging the best scotch because your comment about where did Simon Stylites relieve himself. So that's like they take care of all the discomfort of that kind of stuff, but they give you this kind of comfortable solitude. Do you know where Simeon Stylites pooped?
I do not, nor will I ever look it up, because
can it be looked up? I wonder.
I'm sure there's some. I guarantee you, having been in the academic historians, moving in those circles for a small amount of time, I guarantee you somebody made it their master's or PhD thesis to describe in detail how the Stylites, or how the Stylites, who sought to imitate him, not just him, but the people that wanted to imitate him, carried out all of their day-to-day life. So I'm sure somebody's written.
Hey, Grok, do you know where? How did Saint Simeon Stylites poop? Because he was up on a platform for a long time. So where and when did he go poop?
Oh, wow. That's quite a question. I'm not Grok, by the way. I'm just here to help. So, St. Simeon Stylites, he was that guy who lived up on a pillar for like 37 years. Honestly, there's no fancy historical record about his bathroom habits, but people guess he probably just let it fall where it fell. I mean, he was up there with barely any room to move, so he didn't have a lot of options. Maybe he had a little spot on the platform to keep things simple. It's kind of gross to think about, but that's likely how it went down, pun intended. What do you think of that tonight?
Oh, wow.
There's way too much AI in this show.
Yeah. So,
okay, stop talking.
Yep.
Got it.
Oh my gosh, it's still on. I can't get her to stop. Stop talking, lady.
So I can't hear her anymore, but
Okay, yeah, it's blocking her out. Okay, she's done. So she just guessed. She's like, yeah, I think he just probably pooped. He just dropped it where he was sitting. It's probably at least a guy with a bucket down there that kind of changes the bucket out, maybe. I don't know.
So, yeah, my guess would be because saints like this, who are hermits, often had people to attend them from time to time to get, like if you're you're out in a cave in the desert, there are some things you need to have from time to time in order to stay alive. So probably it was something similar to that, but a lot more gross.
That's probably the most entertaining part of the day when you're like trying to aim. It's like playing basketball if there's like a thing you're aiming for down there. Anyway, we got to keep going.
Yes, please.
If we were tomorrow morning snowed up in the street in which we live, we should step suddenly into a much larger and much wilder world than we have ever known. And it is the whole effort of the typically modern person to escape from the street in which he lives. First, he invents modern hygiene and goes to Margate. Then he invents modern culture and goes to Florence. Then he invents modern imperialism and goes to Timbuktu. He goes to the fantastic borders of the earth. He pretends to shoot tigers. He almost rides on a camel. And in all this he is still essentially fleeing from the street in which he was born. And of this flight he is always ready with his own explanation. He says he's fleeing from his street because it is dull. He is lying. He is really fleeing from his street because it is a great deal too exciting. It is exciting because it is exacting. It is exacting because it is alive. He can visit Venice because to him the Venetians are only Venetians. The people in his own street are men. He can stare at the Chinese because for him the Chinese are a passive thing to be stared at. If he stares at the old lady in the next garden, she becomes active. He is forced to flee, in short, from the too stimulating society of his equals, of free men, perverse, personal, deliberately different from himself.
Yeah, so I added a break there because this is a long paragraph.
It is a long one.
Is Margate? Is Margate a thing? Just a quick, because he goes to Margate, like we all know what that means.
Well, everyone reading probably knew. Yeah, Margate's a thing. So Margate's one of the seaside towns. If you look at England or the UK, the island of Britain,
hygienic.
England, it looks like a mouth pointed to the right, and okay. Margate's on the lower lip of a person's lip. If you imagine the island as a mouth.
Okay.
And so this was he's going to mention another one of these towns a little later on. But Margate's just a way of going to a healthier place. This is back when it's from the medieval and industrial age. Like, so if you're living in the industrial age, the cities in the interior of England get very dirty and gross. So people would leave on their vacations, or they just take a trip, usually for their health, because you were breathing in a lot of crud. To the coast of England, and that particular coast was popular. So that's Margate.
I see. Okay. Yeah, this reminds me just...
Yeah, go for it.
As I read this part, it reminds me of, liberals in America really can't coexist with someone in a MAGA hat or a MAGA hat or someone who they know as conservative. They're disgust. But yet, like, the Arab or somebody from another culture is on the other side of the world, they'd be excited to go kind of observe or like be around, traveling the world. They could be among these cultures that they know are much more harsh to women, actually harsh to homosexuals and things like that. But because they can kind of observe them as like a National Geographic TV show host, rather than like he says, it's kind of like, if an animal could talk, or suddenly the TV can talk back to you. It's like a thing that usually is passive and you just observe it, suddenly can react to you and interact with you and question you and challenge you. They don't like that. And I think there's plenty of people on the right that are like that too. We bubble ourselves, shield ourselves from these things.
Exactly. And it goes back to comfort again from this previous paragraph, which he's going to keep harping on. It's the fact that you feel yourself kind of superior, or that you can look at something that's far away or foreign or something, and you can just sort of judge it and ignore and not feel self-conscious. But if you stare at your neighbor for too long, they have a reaction that then you makes you uncomfortable. So I like the part where he says he pretends to shoot tigers. He almost rides on a camel.
Yeah.
reminds me of selfie culture. It's like,
Yeah.
let's go places and, take a photo that makes it look like I'm doing these awesome things. And sometimes they are, but a lot of times they're just there taking a photo of themselves, almost doing things.
Right. All right, we'll keep it going. This is the rest of the big, thick paragraph here.
The street in Brixton is too glowing and overpowering. He has to soothe and quiet himself among tigers and vultures, camels and crocodiles. These creatures are indeed very different from himself, but they do not put their shape or colour or custom into a decisive intellectual competition with his own. They do not seek to destroy his principles and assert their own. The stranger monsters of the suburban street do seek to do this. The camel does not contort his features into a fine sneer because Mr. Robinson has not got a hump. The cultured gentleman at number 5 does exhibit a sneer because Robinson has not got a dado. The vulture will not roar with laughter because a man does not fly. But the major at number 9 will roar with laughter because a man does not smoke. The complaint we commonly have to make of our neighbours is that they will not, as we express it, mind their own business. We do not really mean that they will not mind their own business. If our neighbours did not mind their own business, they would be asked abruptly for their rent and would rapidly cease to be our neighbours. What we really mean when we say that they cannot mind their own business is something much deeper. We do not dislike them because they have so little force and fire that they cannot be interested in themselves. We dislike them because they have so much force and fire that they can be interested in us as well. What we dread about our neighbours, in short, is not the narrowness of their horizon, but their superb tendency to broaden it. And all aversions to ordinary humanity have this general character. They are not aversions to its feebleness, as is pretended, but to its energy. The misanthropes pretend that they despise humanity for its weakness. As a matter of fact, they hate it for its strength.
Recently, I moved back to California and moved into a new neighborhood. And, I can jive with what he's saying, which about the difficulty of getting to know your neighbors, how much more work it is. And it's more uncomfortable than hanging out with friends or whatever, or coworkers. Right. But there's a sense in which it's also more important, and because it brings us out of ourselves, and we've really experienced that ourselves, getting to know people in this particular neighborhood. They have a real neighborhood culture, like old school, sort of almost like Leave It to Beaverish, but not quite as saccharine. And they have block parties and things like that, and so it's been fun, but it's way more uncomfortable than hanging out with friends. That's for sure.
Right. Oh yeah. What the heck is a dado?
Dado is another word for wainscot, what we now call wainscot.
Okay, wainscot.
So it's
I don't know if people are high and mighty about that. Like people are like, oh, you don't got a dado.
This was developed. So the culture gentleman at number 5 is going to have the best architectural features in his house. It's
wainscot. It's like the inner it's like vertical wood strips that go on your wall. Is that?
Yeah, like halfway up your wall. So basically, like,
and then there's like a chair rail, right?
Yep, there's a chair rail, also called a dado rail. But there's a rail across, usually horizontally. Well, not usually, always horizontally.
Is that really there to guard when the chairs bump into the wall or something?
Yeah, and also in some cases, if you have a high dado rail, they'll build in like plate holders and things, so you could put like a row of plates up on the wall. Depends on how tall your wainscoting is, but dado is just another name for that.
So you get judged by certain people, like, no dado, huh?
Yeah,
loser.
Exactly. It's like not having a Tesla in our society. Well, nowadays, I guess it might be the reverse.
Yeah, absolutely. All right.
Of course, this shrinking from the brutal vivacity and brutal variety of common men is a perfectly reasonable and excusable thing, as long as it does not pretend to any point of superiority. It is when it calls itself aristocracy or aestheticism, or a superiority to the bourgeoisie, that its inherent weakness has injustice to be pointed out. Fastidiousness is the most pardonable of vices, but it is the most unpardonable of virtues. Nietzsche, who represents most prominently this pretentious claim of the fastidious, has a description somewhere, a very powerful description in the purely literary sense, of the disgust and disdain which consume him at the sight of the common people with their common faces, their common voices, and their common minds. As I have said, this attitude is almost beautiful, if we may regard it as pathetic. Nietzsche's aristocracy has about it all the sacredness that belongs to the weak. When he makes us feel that he cannot endure the innumerable faces, the incessant voices, the overpowering omnipresence which belongs to the mob, he will have the sympathy of anybody who has ever been sick on a steamer or tired in a crowded omnibus. Every man has hated mankind when he was less than a man. Every man has had humanity in his eyes like a blinding fog, humanity in his nostrils like a suffocating smell. But when Nietzsche has the incredible lack of humor and lack of imagination to ask us to believe that his aristocracy is an aristocracy of strong muscles or an aristocracy of strong wills, it is necessary to point out the truth. It is an aristocracy of weak nerves.
When I hear people say that, have this attitude about humanity, even myself, it's really easy to kind of just look when you're like in a crowd of people, you're at Disneyland, whatever, people start to feel like just this mass of like a mashed potato dish of horrible things. You just hate everybody. And it's easy to, when you're thinking about elections and things, to kind of just turn people in these giant groups of idiots, or you kind of just, you oversimplify people, and I think there's people who build, when you build actual worldviews on this view of humanity, that's where I think the real danger is, because you're proving that you don't actually interact with real people, if that's your real view of people. Right.
I think the turn in his paragraph was what he said: fastidiousness is the most pardonable of vices, but it is the most unpardonable of virtues. So he's saying, if you're real picky about being around a lot of people or the habits of people in large groups, that's understandable. It's a weakness because you should be more understanding, but it's understandable, and no one's going to get down on you for it. It's when you do the thing that Nietzsche did, where you pretend that it's the sign of some kind of virtue, that you can't stand the unwashed masses and that you're better than them, that you show that you're not.
Right.
So
just refreshing my, I believe it may have been sophomore year English class, fastidious. Does that mean kind of efficient? Like
no, it means being particular about things, like OCD. Basically, it's OCD. Like it's a synonym for OCD of a certain type. So yeah, you're real particular, and you're easily disturbed by things not being in order as you see them. And so that's the, and I love how he takes. It's a great takeout. I'm so glad this is our Chester burn for this reading, where he's Nietzsche famously is the guy that's all about, like, let's make a society of the strong physically, the strong-willed, the will to power. Let's make a society where we stop being weak. And Chesterton is pointing out that when you make a society that looks down on everyone else that you can't stand, then you're not being strong in any sense. You're making an aristocracy of weak nerves. And weak nerves was a 19th and early 20th century term.
Nietzsche got taken down to Chesterton.
Yes, he did.
I forgot about the stinger there. So Nietzsche did. And weak nerves it was actually a medical diagnosis from the 19th century.
Oh, really?
You'll find it in Freud. Yeah, he uses it as part of his analysis of people. So weak nerves is supposed to be just like your muscles are part of you. The nervous system, which they had just sort of discovered and laid out in detail, not just discovered, but relatively soon on that. They thought that the nerves themselves, if a person was fearful, cowardly, high in neuroticism or anxiety, couldn't handle normal tasks in life, normal stress, then there must be a deficiency in their nervous system. Like they must have some physical weakness of their nerves. So weak nerves was an actual diagnosis in medicine. And it's pretty funny that he's diagnosing Nietzsche.
Is it like having anxiety attacks?
Yeah, that'd be a sign, but they're trying to point to the fact that, like, if you had, if you have muscle dystrophy, where your muscles are wasted and weak, that was what they were saying when they said you had weak nerves. They thought your actual nervous system, they're wrong about it, but they thought your actual nervous system was actually weak.
Got it.
So it's just a term that means that you just can't handle the normal things that everyone else can handle in life without breaking down. So anyway,
sweet. Well, halfway through. Next week's is a little bit longer, but we're not going to do the big intro on it. And don't forget to check out our Patreon, patreon.com/Chesterton's Gateway. Join the group, be one of the cool kids, get behind the scenes stuff once we start making it. We'll have been by the time this is out. That's right. And
Chesterton's Gateway is produced by Ethan Nicolle and Michael Grumbine.
awesome.
It is based on the book of the same name, which can be found on that capitalist monstrosity Amazon.com. Send questions and comments to GKCinfo@axcop.com. And join us on Patreon, where only the true Chestertonians can be found. Goodbye.
all right. Well, guess we'll see you next
Bye-bye.
week.
Bye,
Next
freeloaders.
half, Defense of the Family.